Why does Python have so many functions, methods, etc., involving string manipulation, text file manipulation? Why does Python go to great lengths to deal with text and strings? Hello, everybody. This is Nick Totero, Professor of Information Technologies, Computer Science, Lakeland Community College. The answer is fairly easy. If you just take a quick look at some documentation of the internet, the cloud, whatever, you'll often see the internet represented as this big puffy cloud. And you begin to ask for years, why do they represent the internet as a big puffy cloud? Or why do they often show the unknown as a big puffy cloud? That is because we don't know. We don't know what's going on up in the internet. We don't know what operating systems that may be used. We don't know what software may be used up there. So it's represented as a big puffy cloud because we don't know many configuration files, DNS configuration files or zone files, configuration files for Linux machines, configuration files for Apache. Those are stored as text files. JSON stored as a text file. When we maybe export files from a database, comes out as a text file. A lot of times when we import to a database, we're importing from a text file. So text files and strings are kind of the default. They're what I often refer to in my classes as the lowest common denominator. So therefore, operating systems, programs need to be able to understand and manipulate text files. This is one of Python's strengths, is the ability to look at a string and do a lot of things with it. Now, we're going to cover strings in multiple videos. In this particular video, I just kind of want to show you some rudimentary thoughts involving a string. So let's go up to my screen. All right. I'm at my Python interpreter. And one of the first things we need to understand about a string is you'll hear a string is immutable, meaning a string doesn't change. Once I assign a value to a string and I say, okay, I'm going to say name is going to be equal to and if I look at now that string variable, it says Nicholas A. Totero. In this video, we're even going to talk about when to use the double quotes versus the single quotes. But what I've done is I've created a variable, a string variable, and I've assigned it the value of Nicholas A. Totero. We can't change that string value. Now, what we can do is reassign it, but the methods and the functions that we are going to use in other videos, we'll briefly look at them in this video, doesn't change the actual string value. We would have to reassign it. So let's say, for example, I want to see this string value in lowercase. I basically want to get rid of all the uppercase. And well, we have a function or a method that we can do that with. So if I say name dot lower, whoops, should put a space there, lower, you'll notice that it puts it out as Nicholas A. Totero, puts it as all lowercase. However, like I said, strings are immutable. If I go back to the actual value of name, you can see that it didn't change it. So it just kind of outputted it in lowercase. Same thing, what if I wanted to take everything into an uppercase? You see it displayed it back to the standard output as all uppercase, but the string did not change. If I want to change the string, I would have to reassign it. I would have to say name is going to be equal to name dot, and in this case, we're going to say lower. Now name has changed because I reassigned it. What we will talk about in other videos is many times we have to massage the data, massage the string so it becomes all consistent. Many of us, it's not a tried and true practice, but many of us will often represent strings in all lowercase, right? It's just one of those little things because there's things I could then manipulate because I know as the person programming that's in lowercase. I'm not encouraging it, but I know that I can manipulate a lowercase. I could also do it as uppercase, but it's just one of those little standards that I have done in my time. There are other string functions and methods that I can use. Again, I did change the value of a name. It's now in all lowercase. Let's say I want to uppercase. Now, I'm sorry, we've already done an uppercase. Let's say I want to capitalize, right? Now, what Python will allow me to do, if I say capitalize, you will notice that what did it do? It basically took the very first character in that string and it just capitalized it. But that's not quite what I was looking for. I was looking for everything to be capitalized. Now let me clear my screen real quickly, make it a little bit. Don't worry about this particular command. It's just a little shortcut so I can clear. I still have my values here. I want to capitalize every first word, like in a title. Well, guess what? Python gives us that ability. So if I say name.title, you will notice that Nicholas, A, and Detiro are capitalized. Now, a little subtle thing. I and my family spell my last name with an uppercase T, D-I, uppercase T-I-R-R-O. But Python in the programming language doesn't know that. It just sees that T somewhere in the world. So oftentimes you will see my name split. It doesn't make a difference to me, but now you can begin to understand why sometimes with people's names, you might see a split in there, especially people that might have one of those designations, DI space, whatever. So in this particular case, I would have to have the name, the space in there. So I'm going to rewrite that name. I'm just going to overwrite it, and I'll say this time, I will say all lowercase, space, spell my name right. And if I look at it now, there's a space there. And if I do that title, you can see in that particular case, it uppercased the way I want it. Now, these are things that we're going to explore in more detail in other videos. I'm just kind of going through these relatively quickly. The key point in this video is that the strings are kind of the lowest common denominator in which we can share particular information. That's the biggest thing out of it. The next biggest thing out of this particular video is that we saw that there's a lot of functions and methods for strings to manipulate them, but the string is immutable, meaning that I'm not changing the string unless I reassign it. In other videos, we will explore some of the other things that we could potentially do with strings and why that becomes important. But right now, string is our lowest common denominator. It's immutable. It is used quite extensively. Now, there is one thing I do want to explore real quickly is the single quote versus the double quote. You see, I kind of use it interchangeably. You can. Now, the general rule of thumb is if you have a single quote in the string, then you put double quotes around the string, and vice versa. If you have a double quote in the string, then you use single quotes on the outside. For example, let's say I have a string, Nick's bike, right? Or it's a possessive. So I can say, I'm just going to create a string. Let's call it my string, right? And it's going to be equal to double quote, single quote, Nick's bike. Double quote. You notice that we have that single quote within the string. I hit enter, and if I say my string now, you can see that we have the single quote. Also notice here that the double quotes are surrounding it, and vice versa. Let's say there's double quotes inside our string. So this one I'll make a string called my string 2, and this one I will say it's going to be equal to Nick said, double quote, hello world, double quote, and then we close it off with that single quote. And when I take a look at that string, You can see now that string has that double quotes in there. And there's other things that we can do with it. But for our base understanding, let's just start with, if you have a single quote inside your string, then we close the strings with double quotes. If you have a double quote inside your string, then we close the string with single quotes. Again, in other videos, we're going to investigate this in more detail. Let's wrap some things up. Okay, if you get anything out of this relatively short video, is that strings and text files, however they may come in, you may be working with comma separated values, you may be working with JSONs, you may be working with configuration files, you may be importing and exporting from databases. Oftentimes those are in a simple text file because all the operating systems, all the devices out there can understand and read text files. So that is why strings, string manipulation, text file manipulation is so critical in what we do. The second thing is when we start working with strings and we put them into a variable, they become immutable, meaning they don't change unless we reassign them, right? Those are two important topics. So going back to the question that I asked, why does Python and Linux and Java and all these other programs have all these functions and methods and ability to really manipulate strings? Because it is the lowest common denominator. So with that being said, hopefully you'll watch the other videos, but with that being said, let's go learn something.